Right off the bat, we get a catchy old school cartoon sounding theme song, to which ends with Slim Shady saying,
"Hey yo, what's crackin', bitch?"
The first episode is named The Party Crashers, and right off the bat we meet pretty much the entire main cast: Marshall, Big D, Ken Kniff, Dave, and Sue. They're arguing about something that they lost earlier when our boy Slim Shady comes and flips through the window. Here's where we find out they lost a basketball game, and Slim has an idea to crash the party to get back at them. We get our first tidbit in Eminem lore here, as we see his mom face down in her bed literally pissing herself, while Shady steals money and Viagra from her bureau. On the way, they stop at a convenience store where Leonardo DiCaprio just happens to be chilling outside. Shady and Big D talk shit about him before they beat him up. They keep driving, and we see a sign that says they're in Southwest Park, while throwing a beer bottle at a bus full of special needs kids, causing them to crash and drown in a river. It then also magically turns into winter somehow, and they finally pull up to the party where we find out it's all South Park characters who had beat them. Slim Shady then gives everyone the Viagra, telling them it's ecstasy, and all hell breaks loose. One of the kids eats a laxative-filled chocolate bar. Shady had set up Marshall and a cheerleader in the closet, which is where the laxative-filled boy goes to shit all over while they're having sex. Meanwhile, Ken Kniff is literally just trying to hook up with any little boy. They eventually leave and kidnap Kenny in the process, obviously. And when they get back home, Matt Damon and Ben Affleck are just standing outside their trailer, and the episode ends. The next episode, Plexi Max Extravaganza, right where the previous one left off. Shady and Big D get into it with Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, and eventually kill Affleck with an Oscar. Oh, Kenny also took a bong rip and died, by the way, to which causes Mr. T and the A-Team to come rescue him. Everyone chills back inside when they see a commercial for a Christina Aguilera concert at the Plexi Max. Marshall really wants to go because she thinks she's hot, so Shady and the gang agree. They get to the concert where the rest of the episode is pretty much just them waiting for her to come on while throwing some punches at her character. The only other interesting thing happening is Ken, who finds out there's a monster truck rally going on which claims to have lots of male energy, and that gets him going. He meets a guy named Jeffrey who says they can take Ken and the gang to see Christina at the mall straight up, which gets everyone excited, and the episode ends there. The next episode, Dyke Hill Malls, starts with them at the front of the line for the Christina Aguilera meet and greet. Shady starts giving Marshall some pretty, just straight up sexist advice on how to get in bed with Christina, which is by getting up there and putting his balls on the table and telling her to sign these, which is exactly what he does. Except she's not actually signing anything, it's a guy in front of her with a stamp of her autograph. So Marshall gets his balls straight up stamped, which causes him to faint. Meanwhile, the rest of the gang goes outside the mall to harass Everlast. Marshall comes back outside and tells Shady it didn't go well for him, so Shady says he'll handle it. He beats up her bodyguard to talk to her, but she doesn't reply to him at all, which causes Shady to get mad and rip her head off, only to find out she's a robot. He takes her head as a trophy, and Shady and Marshall walk into the distance as the episode ends. Episode 4 is titled Movie Star Marshall, and starts off with the gang going to a rave. Here they meet Johnny 8-Ball, who is just a massive cokehead. They then get into it with some rapper that I think is supposed to be Mace, maybe one of you will know. That's when a movie producer comes up to Shady and Marshall and offers them a deal. The crew goes to the studio lot where Shady tells Marshall to go into his trailer to get with some groupies. Marshall and Dave get chased into the trailer by a group of girls. While Dave keeps watching them through the window, Marshall actually goes on a bit of a philosophical thought here, talking about what makes somebody better than somebody else.
I mean, what makes one person better than another person just because he's seen by more people? I mean, most of these actors, models, they never went to a top college. They never do anything for anybody.
Yeah.
What about doctors, architects, fine literature? Why don't we value that?
Yeah.
Dave, do you like to suck huge gorilla cock? You like to smoke cock, don't you?
Sure.
He realizes that Dave isn't listening to him at all, and eventually just opens the door to unleash the mob of girls on them, who pretty much just assault them. While that's happening, Shady and Big D meet Fred Savage and roast him until he runs off. Marshall gets done the best 5 seconds of his life, his words not mine, and they go to set to start shooting. Marshall doesn't do well and eventually takes Shady's advice from earlier and throws a tantrum on set. The director loves it though, and the episode ends with his co-star begging to get into his trailer. The next episode, titled Slim Shady Redemption, starts out with the gang in prison. Big D takes over the narrator, and we get to see a shady version of Shawshank Redemption. Kinda. The story starts out with Shady throwing hamburgers at his teacher's chalkboard so he can break the rest of the gang out of school because something is going down in town. They walk over to a restricted area, hop the fence to find a cave. They go in and see a bunch of barrels full of old movies and music that the US is trying to bury to forget about. Pretty much this is just them roasting stuff that they didn't like at the time. They eventually get caught by the Secret Service and get thrown in prison. They meet the leader of a gang where they try to score some weed and a beanie for Ken. They won't give Ken a beanie, so he goes apeshit on the gang leader and steals his. This makes Ken kinda badass and he starts walking by different cells. One where we see Eminem is locked up. He tells Ken he's not even supposed to be here yet and we'll see him in a minute.
Who's got the juice now?
Yo, I ain't even supposed to be in here yet. I ain't been convicted. I'll see y'all in a minute.
And in the next cell over, Ken meets Daryl Strawberry, the famous baseball player. Shady somehow gets put in solitary confinement, and while the crew is eating lunch, they try to plot a way to break him out. We see Shady get a visitor from who I assume is supposed to be Kim, and he starts freestyling for a week straight apparently.
I fucking hate you. I can't stand you. I'll rip your titties off and then I'll hand you. You're ugly. You won't hug me. You're dumb. You're stupid. I'm fat and lazy and crazy. You think I'm shady? I am shady. You stupid bitch. Take your silicone implants. Now you got a slim chance of fucking with me ever again. I've got your silicone. You can't fuck with me, but I'm still alone in my cell. Mad as hell. Might as well give you some more shit to sell. Fuck!
Meanwhile, Daryl is jonesing for any drug, and Ken says he can get them, but he needs to give the Arabian goggles to the Irish twins, some of the toughest boys in the prison. And if you don't know what Arabian goggles are, well, it's where a man puts his testicles over someone's eyes while they're sleeping. One testy per eye. Afterwards, Ken gathers the crew in their neon pink cell and comes up with two plans. One to start a drug ring, and one to get Shady out of confinement. The drugs come in, and Dave tells Daryl not to get high on his own supply. Rule number 4. He says okay, but they have to worry about Robert Downey Jr. stealing them. He does actually steal them, which causes Daryl to get so mad he literally breathes fire at him and incinerates Robert Downey Jr. and snorts his ashes. Shady gets out of confinement during this and catches Daryl snorting the ashes and bans him from the crew for life. This is when they meet Knuckles, who is voiced by Exhibit and gets him in the crew instead and has him kill Daryl. Eventually the gang's lawyer comes through and gets them all out of jail. Not Knuckles though, sadly. Rip my brother Knuckles doing time in the pen. Hashtag free Knuckles so it's backwards. Our next episode is titled Ouija Board Blunders and starts with the gang hanging at Marshall's house when he asks his aunt where the PlayStation is. She tells him it's in the closet, which ends up spilling out a bunch of stuff. But right on top of everything is a Ouija board which catches the gang's attention. They end up trying to summon New Kids on the Block, and it works. Then they summon Kurt Cobain, face half off, and start a band with him before going back to the Ouija board. Ken then used the board to summon Johnny Versace, who then takes the gang shopping for a new look. After they get done, Versace throws a Halloween party at the school, where he invites a bunch of people, including Madonna and John Stamos. The crew meets Stamos, who ends up being pretty cool with Shady, and asks him to set him up with the Olsen twins, which is where the episode ends. The next episode is titled De-Virginization, and starts with Shady teaching the gang how to meet girls in online chat rooms. He sets up Marshall with a girl, and meanwhile, Dave takes a bong rip so hard it causes him to yak. Dave is literally me, by the way. Like everything. The hair is kind of scary. Anyway, while puking, he notices mushrooms growing in the bathroom and decides to lick them, and he starts tripping balls. He gets Marshall to do some also, who says he doesn't feel them, until he gets to his date that night. The girl tries to seduce him right at the table, but she looks like a monster to him, since he's tripping and freaks out. He runs out of the date, and the episode ends. The Ass and the Curious is the name of our next episode, and starts with Screech from Saved by the Bell fucking a sloth. Yep, seriously. To which the FBI catches him while they're performing a sting operation and blackmails him to work for them. We then cut to Shady and Big D watching Saved by the Bell ironically, and they try to figure out a way to move some mushrooms. Big D ends up bringing his little brother out, claiming he can hide anything in his ass. And I gotta admit, this is probably the thing I found funniest in this show. It then cuts to a flashback of Big D and his little bro taking a bath together, and somehow his brother literally absorbs all the bath water in his ass. I don't even know. They send him off and it works. Shady ends up with a fat pile of cash. That's when an undercover Screech pulls up to the scene. Shady pretty much immediately can tell he's a narc and starts to ponder on how he can solve the solution. Meanwhile, Screech tries to infiltrate the gang through Sue, while Ken gets progressively jealous of the whole thing. Screech goes up to the gang at school while they're at the bake sale selling mushrooms on cupcakes, and Big D is about to beat him up when Shady stops him, coming up with an idea finally. To get in with the gang, they give him mushrooms to sneak into a concert like Big D's little brother, except Shady made sure the bag would break while inside of him. It does break, and he starts tripping, going crazy, runs right into the street, gets hit by a bus, and dies. The next episode is titled Parent-Teacher Night, and is the original finale to the series. The episode starts in school with Sue and her dad meeting the teachers, and then for some reason he just starts loving this guy because he's rich. We then see Big D pull up with his mom, and we see Shady there alone because he has no parents. Big D's dad also tries to show up, but then gets raided by the police. Marshall tries to wake up his mom, which isn't happening. So we then cut to Ken and find out the dude from earlier is his dad who's rich and gives Ken money to pretend not to be his son in public. We then cut to Dave's parents, who are the American Gothic, talking to his teacher when she straight up rats on Dave about the stuff he gets into with the gang. The rest of the episode is the teacher telling a story about how Dave and the gang once brought animals to school and they accidentally all got murdered, leading to a Scooby-Doo inspired investigation. There was also one bonus episode titled The Lost Episode and featured some even earlier animation takes and voices. Like Dave has the same voice as Shady and Marshall in this one, and sometimes the wrong character will say the wrong line. The episode is pretty much just a different take on the Christina Aguilera episodes, and I imagine this is the one they used to pitch the show probably. They wake up, get yelled at by Shady's mom for stealing her cigarettes, see the commercial on TV, and decide to go. And that, folks, is a wrap on the Slim Shady Show.